All right, 1, 2, we talked about the angle addition postulate, the ruler postulate. We talked about how to find the lengths of things, that kind of stuff. So number 1 says measure AB to the nearest eighth of an inch. Okay, it gave you the little ruler there. So if you just go from one to the other, this would be 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. Okay, so this is 1 3/8. 2 says find CE. How do you find CE? Good. Use that's called you're using, you guys know this stuff. It's like common sense, right? But if you can think about it in geometry terms, you're actually using the segment addition postulate to take those two parts and add them together. And 7 plus 15 is? See how smart you are? Okay, 3 says plot the points. F, -3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. G, 2, 5. H, 3, 1. And J, 3, -3. 1, 2. Are F, G, and H, J congruent? So I didn't do J. Okay, F, G is here. H, J, they are both segments, yes. Okay, but are they the same length? No. So no, and the reason is they're not the same length. And then 4 says find KL, so you can do this a couple of different ways. Just subtract 4 minus a -3, which becomes 4 plus 3, or 7, or you could literally count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units. Either way, 7. Easy stuff, right? Yes. Okay. All right, so homework, I'm going to go over your challenge questions for a reason, right? Don't feel dumb because you didn't get it, but you're not allowed to just give up either. It says 4 cities lie along a straight highway in this order: City A, City B, City C, and City D. The distance from A to B is 5 times the distance from B to C. The distance from A to D is 2 times the distance from A to B. Copy and complete the mileage chart, okay? So the very first thing it says that helps you out is that they are on a straight highway. That's not very straight, but you get the point. In this order, so it goes A, then it goes B, then it goes C, then it goes D. I wouldn't worry about it being drawn to scale. Obviously, I'm not worried if one is 5 times as long as the other one. I just want, for right now, the visual. Then it says the distance from A to B is 5 times the distance from B to C. So do I know anything about this length, the B to C? No, that's my variable. So make it X, make it D, I don't care what you make it. I'm going to make it X. This is my X. I know nothing about that length. But they just gave me a comparison. A to B is what? 5 times that length, which means 5x. Then it said the distance from A to D, 2 times the distance from A to B. So 2 times 5x or 10x. You with me so far? The only piece of information it actually gave me in this chart was the distance from C to D. So if from C to D, this is 10, you with me so far? Okay. Then I have a length for the whole, and I have a length for all these 3 parts. What can I do with those 3 parts? And set them equal to the whole. You're actually doing the segment addition postulate with a bunch of data, okay? So 5x plus x plus 10 equals 10x. Now does it make sense? Yeah. Now you get 6x plus 10 equals 10x. 10 equals 4x. X equals 10 over 4. 5 over 2. 2.5. That's the first piece of information you get, which is from B to C. So that goes B to C 2.5. And then A to B is 5 times that. $12.5. Right? You get it from here? A to C is that plus X, so this plus 2. A to D is 10 times that. And then you keep going. You good from there? Yeah, okay. So my rule and challenge is if you leave it blank, I'm going to yell at you. Don't do that. At least try to set up something. All of you could have drawn a straight line and put your points A, B, C, D. Give me something. Because sometimes you might surprise yourself in just attempting it. It might actually click and make sense, okay? You're not allowed to give up just by saying, oh my gosh, there's a paragraph there. I'm done, okay? Word problems are not something you just skip because there's words. All right, let's open to 1-3, which is midpoint and distance formulas. So we get a little bit away from vocab and more into formulas here, but there's still a little vocab. This is the last of the sections that's going to get covered on your quiz for Tuesday. So Tuesday will be 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. Okay, when we finish quiz on Tuesday. Yep. Oh, okay, I'll put Tuesday. Yeah. Key vocabulary. Midpoint of a segment is the point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. And a bisector of a segment is a point, ray, line segment, or plane that intersects the segment at its midpoint. Okay, so a couple of key differences between these two. A midpoint is only a point. It's exactly a point, right? And it can only divide a segment. So if I have a segment, the point that's directly in the middle is the midpoint. And you will know it's directly in the middle because it will say B is the midpoint of AC in the directions. Or you'll get two little congruent marks on A, B, and BC. Or it will give you actual lengths, like this is 5 and this is 5. There has to be some communicated way to tell you. You can't just look at it and say it looks like it's the middle. That doesn't work, okay? So midpoint, only a point, and can only cut a segment. Whereas a bisector can be a point, a ray, a line, or a plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint. So the bisector is technically a point. The midpoint is technically a bisector of that, okay? But a bisector can also be another line, a plane, a ray, okay? It can bisect only a segment though, right? Because can you bisect a line? Nope. No, why not? There's no middle. There's no middle, it doesn't end, right? Does that make sense? Can you bisect a plane? No. Nope, doesn't end. Can you bisect a ray? No, right? Half of it ends, but the other half doesn't. Okay, the only thing you can bisect is a segment. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, but a bisector can be a point, a line, or a plane, or a line segment, or a ray, anything of that. Okay, example 1. In the skateboard design, VW bisects XY at point T, and XT is 39.9 centimeters. Find XY. Break it down, right? So it says VW bisects XY. So VW is here, is bisecting XY. If it wasn't already marked, you could mark it, but it's actually already even marked on there for you. This already telling you this is congruent to this. And XT, 39.9. How can I find XY? I could add what? I can add another 39.9 or multiply times 2. Either one's going to get you the right answer, okay? Whether you're an addition kid or a multiplication, doesn't matter. So 39.9, 39.9. Good. Easy stuff, right? If I could teach you nothing else, is to label the crap out of these diagrams. Like label it, write it right on there, okay? Don't try to do all this stuff in your head. That's where mistakes are made. All right, point M is the midpoint of VW. Find the length of VM. So M, right here, midpoint of VW. It's already marked. If it wasn't, I would have marked it. Find the length of VM. So I want to know the length of that at the end. How do I do it? -1 plus 3x plus 6. Not plus. What's true about these segments? They equal each other. So I can say that 4x minus 1 equals 3x plus 3. If it had told me like VW equals a numeric value, then you can add them and set it equal to it. That's the segment addition postulate. But it's not saying that. It's just saying that they're equal. So then subtract the 3x. Add the 1. Is that my answer? Is x equal 4 my answer? No. Nope. What's it ask for? Good. Good. It's asking for the length of VM. It's getting plugged back into there. Would it matter which one I plugged it back into? No. Why? Good. It's actually not a bad idea to plug them into both and check. Okay? Questions? So those of you, again, that have been missing algebra a little bit, we get it pulled back in. Okay, midpoint formula. The midpoint of this segment that joins points x1, y1, and x2, y2 is the point x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So this is your coordinate geometry. Okay, it's taking things that you can apply to segments and also applying it to things that are on a coordinate grid. Yay. Oh. Okay, example 3 says, find the coordinates of the midpoint of the segment that joins the given points. So I'm going to focus in on A first. I'm going to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. Would it matter which ones I gave the 1s or which ones I gave the 2s to? No. Okay. So 0 plus 6 divided by 2, and then 4 plus negative 2 divided by 2. How many of you just looked at B and said, why are there letters there? Okay. It's still the same process, right? It's just that there are letters there. So I'm still going to add these two together. So B plus 2 plus 3B all over 2. And then add these two, right? So 0 plus 6 divided by 2. So combine your like terms. 4B plus 2 over 2. Oops. 6 over 2. And then every term in that first one is divisible by 2, so I can simplify it. And I get 2b plus 1 and 3. So just because there's letters in there doesn't mean you're allowed to freak out, okay? Same process. Questions? All right, now we're putting on a coordinate grid. So it says the midpoint of JK is M, and that's 2, 1. The one endpoint is 1, 4. Find the coordinates of the endpoint K. Okay, so I have this one. I have my one endpoint. I have my midpoint. This time I'm missing the other endpoint, okay? Think about how this works. X1 plus X2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2 gives you the midpoint, which is your x, m, y, m, right? Because it's the x of your midpoint and the y of your midpoint. Which means you can actually split these. I can say that this equals this number and this equals this number. You with me? So if I add the 2 x's divided by 2, I get the midpoint of the x, right? If I add the 2 y's divided by 2, I get the midpoint of the y. Yes? So I'm going to actually split those up. I'm going to say that x1 plus x2 over 2 equals the x coordinate of my midpoint. y1 plus y2 over 2 equals the y coordinate of my midpoint. Usually I know the x1 and the x2, but this time I don't, right? If we call this x1 and y1, this is my x midpoint, this is my y midpoint. I don't know my x2 and my y2. So plug in what you've got. 1 plus x2, I don't know, over 2 equals what? What's the x coordinate of my midpoint? 2. y1, which is 4, plus y2, which is what I don't know, over 2 equals the y coordinate of my midpoint, which is 1. Okay? Now we've got like 2 equations set up. How would you normally solve this if it was just an equation with a variable? How do you get something out of the denominator? Multiply it. So I'm going to multiply it on both sides, over here and over here. It's going to cancel here. And I get 1 plus x2 equals 4. And then how do I get x2 by itself? Good. And I get x2 is 3. And then I do the exact same process on the right-hand side. Multiply by 2, multiply by 2. It cancels here. 4 plus y2 equals 2. Subtract the 4. And there's my coordinate point. It's separate right now. If I just put it in a coordinate point form, it should match what I've got over here. Yep.
I know it's not the way we were taught, but can we just like figure it out based off of the...
You usually won't have a graph.
Okay.
Yeah, so the difference is you won't have a graph. If you have a graph and you want to just count your slope, you're fine. But if you don't have a graph, you have to do it the way we just went over. Does that make sense? Okay. Questions? So we're basically just splitting it into two equations, the x parts and the y parts, and then solving them to get the other part. Yep. Just to let me know that that's the x coordinate of my midpoint, right? To differentiate between x1 and x2, and then the x coordinate of my midpoint. Okay, last formula in this section is the distance formula, which helps you find the distance between 2 points, okay? It also helps you find, so sometimes you'll also see it as the length of a segment. It's the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So now you've got two postulates, two equations, and a whole bunch of vocab. All right, example 5 says find the length of PQ for P 6, -3, and Q 4, -5. So again, distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. It does not matter which ones you make the 1s and the 2s. You just got to be consistent. So if this is x1, I can't pair it with y2. It's got to be x1, y1, x2, y2. And then plug them in. So 4 minus 6 squared plus -5 minus a -3 squared. I get -2 squared minus a -3 becomes what? Plus 3. Good. So I get plus -2 squared. I get the square root of 4 plus 4, which is the square root of 8. Is square root 8 a perfect square? No, right? No. But what can I do with that? 2 root 2. If you are unsure, if you can break it down, you're going to use your factor tree. So I'm going to break 8 down until I hit prime numbers. 8 is 2 and 4 and 2 and 2. And because it's a square root, you need 2 of the same numbers to go to the outside of your square root. So for every pair of numbers, there's 2 2s, that one number goes to the outside, and then the one without its pair goes underneath.
Is that called a radical?
It's simplifying your radical. Yeah, you could say square root of radical. It doesn't matter. So if you're going to give me an answer that is in a square root or a radical form, it better be simplified. Okay? Questions on anything relating to 1, 3, or 1, 2, or 1? Okay, So I published your homework. You can start it now. What I'll also do is publish a link to a Quizlet for those of you that are wanting to start practicing for your quiz on Tuesday. I'll put that right on the module where it says quiz review, okay? On Monday, I actually won't be here. We're doing a orientation for the transfer students, so I'm helping with Link Crew with that, so I'll be here but not in this room. The sub will play a video for you as if I was here, so you won't miss me. I'm going to go over the warm-up for 1-3. I'm going to go over a bit of a quiz review, and then you'll work on your quiz review the rest of the class period, okay? Tuesday, when I see you again, we will spend the beginning of class. I'll answer questions on the quiz review, and then you'll take your quiz. Make sense? Yeah? Okay.